Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our second quarterly Title Success webinar. We're very excited to have you. There are many familiar faces in the attendee list today, so we're excited for this conversation on starting a joint venture. This is something that has been a big area of interest in the industry for sure this year. Just a couple of things for you as we get started. We do have a good mix of title agents and underwriters and even vendors in the attendee list. So we're going to try to cover a little bit of everything for folks. Our presenters, Marcus Hunt and Pat Smith, will tell you that this is not a prescription necessarily, but we're going to try to give you all the different information that you can consider in starting your own JV. If you have questions as we go along, please use the chat function and we will get the guys to answer those at the end for you here. If there's anything we don't address during the webinar, we'll make sure that we get answers for you from Marcus and Pat emailed out to you. And as always, we are recording today's webinar, so you will get a copy of the recording and the slides after this within about a week of the presentation. And if you're watching this afterwards, if you're watching the recording right now, thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe to our social channels as we go along. So with that, Marcus and Pat, co-founders of Title Success, please take it away. Talk to us about starting joint ventures here.
Thank you, Wayne. I'm Pat Smith. I'm one of the co-founders of Title Success. This is Marcus Hunt, my partner. Also a co-founder of Title Success. And for those of you who may not know, Title Success is a title industry specific consulting, brokerage and valuation firm based here in Alabama, but doing business around the country. We've done transactions now in a half dozen or more states and more coming in every day. As a title industry consulting group, we tend to try very hard to stay on top of what the trends are in the title insurance industry so that we can advise our clients and, of course, make sure that we're staying current and relevant as those trends develop. And right now, there probably isn't a hotter trend in the title insurance industry than joint venture formation with different groups of partners. Now, you know, we always want to ask what's the joint venture, and go ahead and give us a slide, Wayne, when you get a chance there. You know, I suppose that unless you live in Colorado or Michigan or some state that's legalized marijuana, joint venture has a certain meaning. It may be something different if you're in one of those states, but we're going to focus on the title industry joint venture today. Talk about just the nuts and bolts of a joint venture, what it is, why you might want to do it, how you would go about getting involved, what are the benefits of forming a joint venture, a title operation, what are some of the pitfalls to avoid, you know, what are the challenges, kind of give you a kind of a rudimentary roadmap, caution you about the type of team that you'll put together to work with you if you choose to explore this this avenue, and then hopefully we'll get through in time that we can take any questions that you may have and see if we can leave you with a couple of thoughts in mind to help you consider whether or not this is the route that you would like to go down in order to continue to build and add value to your current title agency. So, Marcus, with that being said, Wayne, slide for us. You know, joint ventures are not a new concept in the title insurance industry, but all of a sudden it's kind of what's old is new again, and it's kind of come back around. So, talk to us a little bit about why we're seeing what we're seeing in the title industry.
Yeah, Pat. So I tell you what, joint ventures in the title space to me are one of these like love-hate deals. You know, it's like, you know, I love like growth and ways that we can expand and grow our title companies. But let's be honest. I mean, for all those that are have their own title company, you know, we hate having to slice up the pie too.
Kind of like reissue credit.
Right. Yeah. So we try to keep that, you know, behind the curtain. And but it is one of these things that I feel like you mentioned that has come back around. I think even in a kind of a bigger force. And it stems, I think, mostly, Pat, and where I'm seeing it is you've got a lot of real estate companies that are looking to squeeze more dollars out of a transaction on their side of the equation, but they've, you know, given up so much when it comes to commissions and what their brokerage takes in. And so the margins are really thin or getting thinner. And so they're looking at other ways, whether that's title, whether that's in-house mortgage, whether that's even P&C insurance. And so, we're feeling it and then getting approached on our side. I think one of the easier paths is to come down the title road because one, the real estate companies can kind of lean on us for all the expertise and really kind of run with it as a partner. And so I think we'll continue to see more from an industry standpoint. It's been an opportunity for growth. So a lot of growing companies have looked at it as a means to growing their title company. So that's what I'm seeing kind of in the market. We talk about, why doing now? Because I think if you don't kind of get in on this window of, real estate companies looking at being a part of a joint venture, then you're going to miss out and someone else is going to step in.
So what I hear you say there is that while joint ventures between title operators and other real estate providers are a mechanism for growth, that there's also a defensive element to this, that others are out there doing this.
Right.
And if you're not willing to at least address that and see how that's going to impact your business, then you may find yourself
losing market share and in big chunks, because this isn't a kind of a onesie twosie kind of thing where this one agent goes over here. It's typically a large group, whether it's a large group of agents that kind of pulled together and are creating a partnership, or whether it's an entire office that have gone in together.
And I guess this is, there have always been players on the national scale that adopt this affiliated business service provider model. I mean, certainly one of the larger ones in the country is the Home Services, Berkshire Hathaway Home Services family, who they do brokerage, they do title closings, they do mortgage, they do insurance.
Mm-hmm.
So those players have been in this space for
a while.
Yeah. What we're seeing now is maybe a step down a notch or two in terms of size.
I agree. And it's more your mid-sized companies. They're looking at, again, growing through this. And, I think across the board, we've talked about it even when we've done mergers and acquisition talks. The industry is consolidating, and I'm not just talking about the title industry, just the real estate industry as a whole is consolidating. So it's not just, again, we're merging and growing larger title companies and creating partnerships, but we're also in the real estate industry as a whole. You see real estate companies, being a part of title companies and mortgage, services. And so all these are, even again, and not just the big guys, but these are, the mid regional mom and pops, that are looking to either create better margins or create a better footprint or provide more services.
And I made a joke at the beginning about joint ventures in Colorado, but just to make sure that we're all on the same page, talking about exactly what is a joint venture in the context that we're talking about. And I define that as a joint venture as being a coming together of ownership groups from two different areas of the real estate industry, be it title, brokerage, title mortgage, title building, and combining their expertise to form an entity that will continue to go forward in that title insurance space. And what you hope for there is that when you form that joint venture, that your joint venture partners, who are going to be real estate agents or brokers or builders or lenders, are going to be able to deliver legally business referrals to the joint venture.
Yeah, and we kind of talk about it, and whenever I work with clients, talk about influence and what kind of influence do each set of the partners bring to the table to really create a company that is viable, that you can set up. We'll talk more about it in a minute. That is an actual true company that runs and stands on its own. And Pat, I think that gets us into like talking about types of joint ventures that are out there, and just really kind of quickly, I've seen even a shift in this current trend of kind of more of a title only joint ventures, and not kind of the whole title and escrow where there's the escrow and closing settlement piece to it. But I've actually seen more of a title only shift, which makes it a little bit easier, helps us even in states where we have to have more attorney driven attorney closed states. So I've seen even a little more of the pendulum shift to that side where it's a title only joint venture.
Well, I completely understand that, as do you, both of us having been operators of title and closing operations. The title only operation is less complex.
Yes.
Less moving parts.
Less people heavy.
Less people heavy. Less risk.
Yeah.
So if you're looking to, form this joint venture and looking to get into the space, every situation is different. Every state is different. Yeah. But, a good starting point would be to form a title joint venture, get it off the ground, get it started, do it right, and then see if once you reach a certain critical mass down the road, do you then want to add the settlement services piece as well. But I think most of the ones that we're seeing working with clients, and we're working with several clients on this at the moment, is that they're starting out in a title only joint venture. Once you determine that you're going to do a joint venture, then you're dealing with, really at this point, you're dealing with a creation under state law.
Right.
This is going to be a business entity created under the laws of whatever state the entity is going to be operating in, or licensed to do business in that state. You've got the same sort of decisions to make as you have with any new business entity. What's the form? What's the entity going to be? Is it going to be an LLC? Is it going to be an S corporation?
Yeah.
And a lot of that will depend on who your partners are, and what everybody's unique situation is. And that's something that you can talk about, is that, so if we decide as a title operator, we see pressure from other brokers, from builders, from lenders to consider getting this joint venture space, and we decide we want to explore this. Well, to have a joint venture, you need partners.
Mm-hmm.
So how are our clients going about deciding who do we seek to partner with?
Well, and I think from a partner standpoint, we talked about our friends, in the real estate industry, our realtors, the broker owners of real estate companies. I've actually seen more of a shift to the realtor driven joint ventures. So I feel like previously we kind of had a big push in the real estate space that were the brokerages. And so a whole office might be a partner with a title company, and
our whole broker might be somehow an affiliated business. Right.
Yeah. And so we had those. And then now I feel like we've gone into a kind of a period where, again, I talk about influence. Who are the people that are part of this partnership, this joint venture, that have the influence to make, help the business, come into the joint venture.
Right.
And you're looking at, the agents, whether it's an agent with a mega team, whether that's an agent just as a large producing agent. So I see more joint ventures right now where it's groupings of these, top agents coming together and that have the influence to be able to drive business as part of the partnership. Other places, I think, Pat, for a while there, we saw a lot of credit unions. So get into lenders and credit unions. We saw a lot of credit unions bringing in a title, piece into their credit union kind of ecosystem to provide a better service for their members. And I still think that's a great space. I mean, we're all kind of in the lending world, everything's slower, so there's not quite the push right now. But I still think it's still a great time, even when things are slow. I've always said, don't forget about our lender partners, in this period when rates are higher and there's not a refi boom going. Now's the time to develop those lender relationships and nurture them.
You mentioned something that I want to pick up on, which we get into the why joint venture space.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm a team, a real estate team, or if I'm an individual real estate salesperson, and I'm trying to decide, why do I want to get into this space? What's in this for me? Well, obviously there's some return on your actual investment,
right?
Which is really all you make out of these from from a monetary standpoint. But you mentioned something about experience and service.
Mm-hmm.
If I am a real estate salesperson and I'm a joint venture partner in a title insurance joint venture, and I'd go through all the appropriate disclosures and I make the referral to my company that I have an interest in, that my client's going to get good service.
Right. Your next on the line. I mean, your name's on it.
Yeah.
I mean, so you have an extra, interest in the success of the company, one, but also that it produces quality,
Timely, quality, and that everybody involved has a good experience because now your name is attached to it.
Right.
So, that's kind of a same sort of thing. From when we talk about who do you want to partner with, or who do you reach out to partner with as a title operator, and you want to, who do I want to joint venture partner with? What your name is now going to be associated. So when you're trying to decide who your partners are, you want to make sure that they do business the way that you do business, that they are honorable, honest, ethical people who will appreciate, understand the boundaries of what the joint venture can and cannot do.
Right. Well, I mean, Pat, I've been a part of some joint ventures with some great realtors, but there's some and good realtors that I didn't partner with because one, maybe just things don't line up. Maybe they have another favorite title company across town. And so as much as they might want to be a part of this joint venture, there might have not been that relationship or kind of ongoing connection to work kind of with us. Because you kind of, every business relationship and partnership is like a marriage. And so you entered into a contract, there's, an operating agreement tells how we're going to do this. And, people can get sideways in business. So you want to go into business with people that
Because the divorce is expensive and messy, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so, so I think even in choosing our partners, we have to not just, let's get as many, in the door as we can. I think we have to be wise about who we partner with.
Well, and we'll talk about this later on, is we have to be mindful also of, again, what partners can bring to the table, not just in terms of, hey, I'm going to try to refer my transactions there, even though we know that there's no mandatory use. You can't force somebody to come there. You can't make them come there. That consumer always has the free choice of where to go for that service. But, you hope that an agent can not only refer or bring their transactions into the joint venture, but that they have a sphere of influence.
Right. That's what I'm talking about, influence.
And it reminded me in some of our other presentations, we talk about some publications and books that we found helpful to us as we work with our clients, whether they're on the mergers and acquisition or the consulting side. There actually is a book, and I cannot remember the author's name, but we'll get it to Wayne to put it in notes. There's a book called Influence, and it talks about the value of developing this sphere of people, this sphere of influence that you can touch. And so when you're choosing those joint venture partners, people you want to be in business with, that's one of the considerations. What's their sphere of influence?
Right.
And I think that's part of the reason that the brokers and the brokerages have been a popular joint venture partner and will continue to be a joint venture partner, is because the managing or qualifying brokers typically have or historically have had a large degree of influence over the people in their office. Now, I think we may be seeing a little bit of an erosion in that as we get to a lot of decentralized broker models,
more team models,
more remote brokers, to where you
don't quite have that influence.
Yeah, you don't have. They're not in the office like this.
It's more team driven, and again, Pat, that's just such a great influence. I think is such a big piece of when we're choosing our partners too. Again, they may have influence amongst in the community that they bring deals to the table, but also influence. Maybe this realtor teaches a new agent course on a consistent basis, a licensing course, and so they've got kind of a base that they kind of can continue to refer and bring in new business via other agents.
Mentorship. I mean, I know that was the thing in the brokerage I used to work with, is we tried in each office to have a team of mentors who were there to assist new agents once they come in, help them get their bearings, get their feet wet, walk them through their first few transactions. Somebody like that who's in that has that larger sphere of influence. And again, everything that we're talking about today, and we'll stress this later on, we're talking about doing this in strict compliance with the requirements of RESPA and any applicable and similar state laws. Nothing we're talking about here is illegal, immoral, or fattening.
Well, and I think, again, this influence piece is because, certain states even require so much of the business has to come from outside the partners. And so if you've got partners that can bring in other business that is not tied to what they directly bring, that's only better for the joint venture as a whole. So, bringing in partners that, again, have those connections and have relationships with other realtors or lenders that then bring more to the table. I think that really is what creates the win.
I think that's where you have. So I think that's probably the first critical decision
Mm-hmm.
as you get into the space is making mindful selections of those that you want to approach about being a part of your new entity, of your new business, new plan.
Yeah.
And we've talked about.
So what?
No, I was going to say, we
Who to partner with? But
but
yeah.
now that we've kind of got we've done the why. Go back one more for us, Wayne. Back to the last one, please. So we've talked about what, the why,
Mm-hmm.
the who. Now let's talk about kind of the management, the how. I mean, how do we go about doing this?
And you'll see on the slide just managing partners, and that's not a managing partner of the joint venture. How do we manage the people that we bring into our joint venture? And these are just a couple. When we were putting this presentation together, some of the big questions that I get when we're putting together joint ventures: how do we allocate ownership shares? That's probably one of the bigger pieces. Once you've chosen who your partners are, how do we decide, well, how much am I going to allocate out to the realtor partners? How much are we keeping as a title insurance, company? And so how does that work? And I see a lot of times, typically the title entity partner holds the majority interest, whether that's a 51% share. Sometimes our underwriters prefer us to have the controlling interest in that, joint venture
Right.
title company. So I see that a lot. But then again, allocating shares to either our lender partners or real estate agent partners, what does that look like? And, it can't be specifically based on, you're going to send me 20 closings a month.
Not
So
even
I'm going to
specifically
give you,
based.
right. So we have to be very careful when we're doing that. Yes, I feel like you can take a snapshot of influence and how much influence and these partners might have, but it's also, and maybe there's a kind of one-time snapshot up front of that you try to get kind of a general idea of what, what your partners, are able to do. But this isn't one of those things where, we're going to reallocate every,
No.
quarter, every 6 months, every
Don't do
year.
that. Well, the other thing to consider here, and we'll talk about this as we get into our regulatory considerations, is that as you form a joint venture, that venture has to be capitalized.
Right.
There has to be cash coming into the door.
Yes.
Now, one of the basic ways of determining who gets what partnership interest is the pro rata portion of cash. That's not necessarily a requirement, but this is one of those areas, and we'll talk again about your team. This is one of those areas where as you start to decide what portion of the JV is going to be retained by the operator, what portion will be available for the joint venture partners, one of the things to consider is what are those partners' tolerance level for the amount of money that they may write a check for
Right.
to be involved in the ownership group. So, again, it may be where you got an interest, a block of interest, they're going to be $5,000 per interest share. And
Right.
then you've got another where it may be $2,500 per interest share, and they get respectively, less partnership group. But this is something that you want to make sure that you talk with your RESPA advisor
Mm-hmm.
as well as your state law business advisor to make sure that you're not setting this up in a way that subjects the ownership division up to some sort of attack that is an improper referral.
Yes. So I think that's extremely important. It's kind of one of the top questions, but it's also one of those questions that you've really got to handle the right way. out of the gate, and you really do need to seek guidance as you set these up and make sure that you're doing it where there's not any question as to, you know, who's a member of the entity and how they got there and what that was based on.
And Marcus, we, you know, again, you and I both practice law, and we've seen our share of prenuptial agreements and divorces back in our kind of bread and our rice and bean days, so to speak. You know, deciding who you are going to get into this relationship, this marriage, as you called it, with is important. But I think that it's also equally important when you're putting together an entity like this to make provisions right up front as part of the fundamental organic documents or operating agreement or limited liability company agreement about the what ifs.
Yeah.
What if, you know, there is a need or a desire to remove a partner, or a need or a desire for a partner to step away from the joint venture? Are there times where you can force them to step out of the joint venture? And you have to be a little careful about what that criteria may be. What have you been seeing with our clients as to how they're addressing those concerns?
Well, and you're right, Pat. You have to be really clear up front. This can be one of those things on the fly we decide to do. So a lot of thought needs to be placed as you're creating your operating agreement on the front end of, you know, I've seen provisions put into operating agreements that if a realtor partner gets out of the business or is not practicing or have a full-time, you know, real estate business, then that's grounds, you know, that's some kind of a trigger to be removed.
Because if they're not in the business providing operating services like the title agent, and they're not in a position to where their sphere of influence is such that they can bring business in, at this point, what is the value to the operating entity?
Well, and again, we can't base it on like, oh, well, this agent only brought 5 deals, and last year they brought, you know, 25 deals to the. It's not about that. It's are they actively engaged in the business, and so it's not based on the number of referrals. It's not based on the amount of, you know, income into the entity, but it's based on that agent's, you know, involvement in the industry.
And then clearly, you know, we have the typical reasons for removal of bad actor type conduct.
Yeah, just your kind of standard that's listed out in an operating agreement where you've got, you know, if there's listed out items, you know, if there's fraud or any kind of other things, proprieties,
whatever.
Yeah, that are grounds for, you know, automatic removal from the entity.
So if I'm going to, and there's going to come a time if you've got a joint venture with 10 realtor partners, there's going to come a time, maybe within the first couple of years of operations, that one or more of those realtors are going to get out of the business. They're going to go do something else. They're going to move. You know, there's going to be a need for them or a desire for them to exit the partnership. You know, I think another important provision to know there is to, what does that look like though? Is there a mandatory buy-sell agreement?
Right.
Is there an option? What's the
formula to creating?
The formula? Yeah, just typical business dissolution type.
Yeah, clauses in an operating agreement, and those may be where there's a already agreed upon amount that each share is worth, or there may be a formula built into the operating agreement that helps determine the value of each share at a particular time.
Right.
Maybe it's, you know, based on, you know, net income over the year at some rate or some multiple. I've seen that. But again, those pieces have to be clearly stated in that operating agreement out of the gate.
Yep.
And I think that's the big piece. I'll tell you another thing that I've seen, Pat, a clause that's interesting. This is whenever I've seen joint ventures done with a specific office, but it's individual agents.
Yeah.
But if the agent leaves that office, say they leave the RE/MAX office, then that's cause for them to be out of the joint venture.
Because that was the whole idea.
Yeah, to keep within that group.
Yeah.
So a lot of different ways. I just think these are some of the key questions whenever you decide who your partners are, how to manage it, and then finally just kind of managing expectations. And we'll just hit this real quick because I know we need to move on, but just our partners' expectations. So I think it's very important to really spell out like how this joint venture works,
And
how
what-
a title company
And
works.
what as a partner, what does the joint venture expect me to do relative to the joint venture?
Right. And so, because you'll get it a lot, like, our real estate agent friends, especially if you're dealing with agents that are partners, they run their own business, but it's their unique real estate business. They don't run title companies on a daily basis. So, how does the process work? How does revenue get generated, like, and accumulate? And when do you make distributions? I think those are important to address up front and make them really clear. So as the person that's running the title company from a day-to-day basis, you don't have 15, real estate agents calling you every other week asking me, where's our distribution, or how's this going, or are we having a company meeting, or all the things. So I think it's just important to upfront be very clear how the company will be operated.
And what you mentioned, are we having a meeting, whatever.
Right.
I think that in situations like this, what's very important is that as the operating partner, as the actual operating member, that you develop a mechanism to regularly and timely report to the other members of what's going on in the partnership.
Yes, I think that's important. Whether you set it up where it's a quarterly kind of meeting or update, or
Weekly order count,
Mhm.
just whatever, so that first of all, you're demonstrating to those who may have a question that these folks are really involved in the business, that they are partners, they have legitimate partnership interests, that you're keeping them informed about the operations of the entity on a regular basis, that they have the ability to provide input,
Mhm.
and that it's not just, hey, here's your money, we'll send you some money at the end of the year.
Right. All right. So, as we move on, we talked about partners and making sure, again, I think one of the key things out of the gate is finding the right partners. But I now getting kind of deeper into the weeds and the nuts and bolts of putting the actual joint venture together, and everything from, we'll talk about the operating agreement and especially RESPA compliance. But I think we've hit on the operating agreement, some when we talk about structuring and having clauses for removing partners. But every joint venture and every operating agreement is 100% unique. They are not cut and paste.
No.
They are very unique to each opportunity that we're putting together. And so, Pat, what have you kind of seen even in the operating agreements?
Sure. So when I was more actively engaged in the private practice law, one of the bread and butter things I did, of course, was to form corporations and joint ventures for people who were starting a business. And we started with a state law compliant template, and they all have certain things in there. Same thing here. Your LLC formation or your corporate formation is a function of state law. So first and foremost, you're going to determine what state that company's going to be formed in, where it's going to be operating. You're going to need some local counsel assistance there to just to help get the articles or certificate of formation prepared in compliance with state law, and make sure that it meets all of the requirements of state law for notices and this, that, and the other thing. But also very important that you have, if you're going to do a joint venture, you have an attorney or some other advisor who is specifically versed and skilled in the application of the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act,
Yes.
as well as any applicable state law that applies to the industry. And that these operating agreements are being, and the companies themselves are being set up and formed specifically to comply with the regulatory provisions that the company operates within. That's a two-part process. One is to make sure that the company is actually formed with documents that are compliant on their face.
Right.
And then the second thing is that as that company operates, you have to periodically review or audit or confirm that the company is being operated in compliance with the provisions of the operating agreements.
Right.
It's easy to, once you get down the road, to kind of start doing things a little differently. But what we recommend, what I've always recommended, is if I set up a joint venture for you, and we have gone through all the hoops, and we're confident that this is a a compliant joint venture on the front end is that every quarter I'll send you a questionnaire that says, answer these questions for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the year, I'm going to come in and spend a couple of days with you or a day with you and go through some of these things to make sure that the allocations are appropriate, that the distributions are in accordance with ownership interest.
Everybody's got the disclosures.
That
and they're
everybody,
updated.
exactly. Very, very important. So that, as far as the operating agreement or the bylaws or whatever your fundamental organic document is, that those work.
Well, and I think you just can't pull one of those off the internet, or you
You're
can't just go down to your
asking for
local
trouble.
business attorney. I
No.
mean, maybe you've got a local business attorney in your market that is versed in real estate and these joint ventures, but for the most part, these are unique. And I, even in my practice, and I've done numerous joint ventures in the past, I still lean heavily on attorneys that specifically practice in this area.
As did I. For 15 years, I was in-house counsel for a large affiliated business group and dealt with RESPA on almost a daily basis. And I considered myself, and still consider myself, to be fairly well versed in RESPA, but there are like 3 or 4 lawyers' numbers that are on speed dial
Right.
in my contact list because they continue to live in this area on a daily basis,
Yeah.
and they have their pulse, their finger on the pulse of what's happening with the CFPB or the state enforcement regulatory authorities. So those are people that I'm always going to reach out to.
And many of you know who some of our top RESPA attorneys are. I mean, they join us at Alta and some of our state, land title conferences. And so we lean heavy on them. We think a lot about them because they are in the middle of that on a day-to-day basis, and having them just even check in and review, or when we're setting up, making sure, our disclosures are done properly and our documents look good from a compliance standpoint, I think is extremely important. And again, because there's changes that happen, and just being up to speed and having kind of the newest and most up-to-date, compliance info and at our fingertips. And it's usually our attorneys that are, just in that world.
Right. They're very good. And like I said, if you have any question about who they are, let us know. We're not going to call them out here because they may fuss at us for doing that. But let us know, and we can talk to you. So RESPA, Lord, kind of the bane of all of our existence, I guess, because in my opinion, it's just my opinion, it's worth exactly what you paid for to get on the seminar. RESPA kind of has it wrong in a way. I mean, the purpose of RESPA was because there was a perception that affiliated business groups were driving up the cost of real estate settlement services. And I think, if anything, we see in the marketplace that we're in now that it is so competitive that there's not an opportunity there for affiliated business to drive up prices. In fact, they face the same competitive pressures as non-affiliated businesses. The hope is that by being a part of an affiliated group of businesses, that you gain efficiencies, you gain improved service, because now my name is associated.
Well,
with
and you
your
have
company.
better connected, all the parties are connected better too.
The software and the
better
communication
and better knowledge of kind of everybody's operation.
But we've still got, RESPA out there is being enforced by CFPB, a very, since its inception, relatively aggressive enforcement agency. They do have some teeth. They will bite as well as bark. So we now want to make certain that our foremost consideration in any real estate settlement service industry that we get into is that we're in full and complete compliance with RESPA. So what you worry about here with the joint ventures is that the CFPB will attack the validity of the joint venture as it being a sham joint venture. It's not a real entity, that it's just a way to improperly funnel fees for referral of settlement business, which would be a violation of RESPA. We've had a couple cases that have wandered their way through the court system that dealt with title and joint ventures. Probably the most famous one is the Borders and Borders case out of the Northern District of Kentucky. I believe it's the Northern District. The companies are based out of Louisville. This was kind of going to be a landmark decision for the CFPB to kind of do away with joint ventures in the title space, and it didn't go the CFPB's way. We got some very good language out of that case to help us put together joint ventures that are formed with an eye toward complying with what the judge said in Borders and Borders. So we've also got a situation now here where we've got a joint venture, and you've got a member of the joint venture that's making a referral to the title company, where we have to make sure that we are fully complying with the disclosure requirements for the affiliated business disclosure.
Right. Yeah.
This is something that you definitely want your RESPA counsel to look
Yes.
at, because there's a temptation when you look at this form. It looks kind of like a poison bottle. It's got the skull and crossbones and everything. It's just really an ugly document, the
beware.
way that HUD promulgated it in the regs back in the 80s. And the CFPB has been very astonishing that you shouldn't deviate from this. So you're going along with all your nice documents. You throw this one out there that looks like it says you sign this, you may die. But we want to make sure that that's being given, that it's being given at the appropriate time by the right people to the right people.
Yeah.
Again, you put this into your operating agreement. It says that if you're a member and you're actively involved in this, that you will be compliant with all this.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a great point too that we didn't mention earlier, like making sure the partners understand the importance of the documentation and disclosures that we have to do. Because if you don't, you're subjecting the entire partnership and joint venture and all the partners to
rather severe penalties.
Yeah, CFPB action.
Yeah. So the other thing that we have to make sure from a formation and operating standpoint is that we have built our entity, we've built our joint venture in such a way that it protects itself from being attacked as a sham.
Right.
A sham joint venture is one that simply is a conduit for the payment of referral fees.
Right.
It can be a joint venture that doesn't actually perform any of the essential elements of the title product.
Yeah.
It could be one that doesn't assume any risk. It could be one that doesn't perform any service. There was I think 16 factor test or a certain number of factor tests that the HUD created for evaluating, using all the facts and circumstances, whether or not a joint venture was a sham joint venture or not. Now that group, that list, and it's things such as, does the joint venture have its own office space with its own lease, its own telephone line, its own employees?
Yeah.
Does it actually perform the
Title
essential title services?
Yeah.
Is somebody underwriting that research? How's the research provided? Who are the customers? Are people outside the ownership group bringing business? Is the company adequately capitalized? That's always a big one. Does it have, now in this day and time, we will say, does it have its own online and social media presence?
Are you marketing?
Are you marketing? Who are you marketing to? So all of these things are things to consider. And these are the things that if I come in at the end of the year and I review your joint venture, I'm going to come in, I want to bring this list and I want to add some things to it.
Right.
And we're going to go through it and talk about how you're addressing those and how you've handled that. And then at the end of that evaluation, we're going to say, okay, looking at all the facts and circumstances, either you pass the flying colors, probably need to work on this, or dude, we may have a problem here.
Yeah.
So that's something that we need to follow up on.
Well, I think that's important. And again, we don't want to get caught in, we'll just kind of, on paper do this, and this is not a legit company. And everybody thinks, why do we have to, some of our partners may not understand, talk about educating them on the process and what we have to do to have a viable joint venture title company. This is part of it. We need space. We need a website. We need the right employees. And sometimes you can, work share kind of employees and pay for, especially if you're out of the gate and getting started.
Lease employees.
That's, a lot
of
people do that.
Outsource services, research. We can outsource those services. Title production. Our policy
production.
There are things we can do. But the essential thing is that the joint venture itself retains the risk.
Yeah. And is managing and doing that process.
Right.
I know we're getting close to wrapping up. Let
me talk about one more thing quickly. So you're forming an entity under state law. and you are bringing investors into your entity.
Right.
So one thing to be aware of, to talk to your local counsel, to make sure is that you're not getting into a situation where you need to be providing offering memorandums
Yeah.
or prospectus to your
as an investment.
Exactly. And we've seen I've litigated some cases where clearly the organizer should have been providing at least a memorandum to the potential investors. It wasn't done. That was a problem. It's problematic. So, every state has slightly different rules about at what point you need to provide some forward-looking information, some risk disclosures and all, as well as the type of investors that you may be able to skip that.
Right.
So just make certain as we get into this space and we start this process that this is something that you're talking to your local counsel.
You need to be
about.
aware of that because that can sometimes it's based on how many partners you have in the deal that triggers the disclosure requirement. Sometimes it depends on who they are. Sometimes it depends on what their net worth is. And so those are, you don't want to get, down the road and then you run into an issue with this investment opportunity.
Yeah, you don't want to deal with the local state securities commission.
Right.
So one more slide for us here, Wayne.
Yeah, as we kind of wrap up, we just wanted to hit a couple of different challenges that we've seen. And some of these we've talked about already. So we can kind of skip over the first one, which is business types. We talk about, do you want to do a title only venture or title and escrow? I just think you just got to consider that as part of the setup and kind of as you talk with partners. And again, we've seen more, I think, recently in the industry, more title only joint ventures. Talked about staffing just a second ago. We talked about properly staffing the joint venture, understanding that you do have to have those employees. It just can't be a shell.
But that's these days it's so easy. You call Paychex. You set up an account with Paychex.
Mm-hmm.
I need to, it's not, it can be done. It's just, that used to be something that when I was setting up joint ventures that people say, I don't want to have to go through all the headache of the payroll. It's not that much of a headache anymore.
Yeah. And you got multiple, even online, like HR and payroll services, and you can set up and do it the right way. And it's not quite as complex. We've gotten more the ability to do that via, online platforms. And so properly staffing, properly having the team around you that is doing the core title functions that are actually being paid out of that entity, that, like you said, the risk is, rolling back onto that entity. So I think staffing, and then clients, let's talk about that for a second. And this is, I think, one of the big questions that we get that's not really in the nuts and bolts of putting a joint venture together, but really is one of these overarching, like balancing, like, what are my current clients going to say when they find out I did a joint venture with this group, of agents, maybe that were tied to one, real estate office, or maybe some of, the top agents that we work with came together and did a joint venture. How do we balance that, with our current clients? And I think that's, again, I think it's a big question that gets asked, and I think you've got to tread into that and really kind of understand kind of how you're going to have that dialogue with your current clients.
Well, one of the things that I always wanted to make sure that I did when I was in as an operator, know your clients.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I don't mean don't just know who they are. Know your clients. How do they conduct business? What are their hot buttons? What are the things? Because, if you do this and you're going through and you're making a selection of, I want to approach these dozen agents and I'm not going to approach agent 13.
Mm-hmm. Someone's going to be upset.
Someone's going to be upset. So you need to be prepared. I know agent 13. I know what his, persona is. I know what his psyche is. And so I've got to know when he comes to me, or when I go to him, even better yet,
Mm-hmm.
and let him know that you know how to walk him through that to smooth that over. And maybe he says, look, I don't want to do this. I want to be a free agent.
Right.
I don't want to feel like that I have to
Obligated.
be obligated, or, I represent mainly the other side of the coin and that's not worthy, but you got to be prepared to have the discussion.
Well, yeah. And, in some of the joint ventures that I've seen and been a part of, I know the agents because over the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years, they've come to me like, oh, don't you want to do it? How do I get in business? And the ones that are like, it's kind of in the back of their mind. And if they hear that you've done it with someone else, that you're going to hear about it.
And others are fiercely independent and they want no part of it.
Well, and I've worked with clients that are like, you know what? I don't want to, like you said, I don't want to be tied to a specific
Feel like I am.
joint venture. Keep providing the great service you're doing. Keep, working with our team the way you work with it. And we're just going to keep, rolling forward like we've always have. So I think it's important.
And I got one last thing, a point that I want to make, which you probably make, is so you got to look at as part of the overall decision-making process of whether or not this is something you want to get into. Is to, at the end, what does that joint venture accomplish from a financial standpoint?
Mm-hmm.
I used to work with and work for a wonderful title guy who was at Home Services. And we had this conversation on numerous occasions as we talked about joint ventures. And we would do projections and we would do pro forma financial statements. And we would look at them and would consider them. And he would look at them and he says, Pat, it just doesn't look like that pie's going to be big enough for everybody to get fed.
Right.
And, at the end of the day, we've got to kind of have a pretty good idea as we set this joint venture up of what's our transaction volume going to look like, what's our average sales price going to be, what's our underwriter split. We've got to put together a pretty darn good pro forma
Yes.
of what that business is going to be over the next 1, 3, maybe even 5 years.
Yeah.
And determine that if the investment,
Yes.
not only of money, but the investment of time and energy is going to not only pay off for you as the operator who's forming the joint venture, but also for the people who are going to be investing.
Right.
And
If
if
not,
they're-
everybody gets frustrated.
If they're going to put $10,000 in and they're going to get back, $85 a year, they're not going to be real happy with that.
Right.
Nor should they be. But if your numbers, reveal that they're getting a reasonable rate of return based on the projected business, and you're getting enough to compensate, for the risk and the capital you're putting in, then that gives you that first green light to step forward into the next step.
Yeah, I think Kent, I think it's extremely important to make sure this is out of the gate, because if not, you're going to spend a lot of time as kind of a managing operator of this title joint venture. You're going to put in a lot of effort that's probably not going to be accounted for, a lot of energy, and then if it doesn't produce, you've kind of been out there spinning your wheels putting this deal together, and it doesn't produce. You got your partners that are frustrated. You're frustrated. I mean, we've seen plenty of joint ventures kind of unravel because it did not perform the way everybody expected.
And we talked about on the front end, why do we get into this? Well, we get into this because there are pressures. There are other people out there that are coming and approaching our clients saying, get involved in our joint venture. Yeah. It's going to do all these wonderful things for you. And we're concerned as operators that we may lose those agents' business because they're going to go off and do this. So we want to consider now doing the joint venture. But at that point, we've got to do some number crunching. We've got to say, well, what if I were to lose this business?
Mm-hmm.
What does that cost me in terms of my revenue and income for my operation? Now, what if I go and spend this amount of money and this amount of effort to get into the joint venture, and I retain that business and maybe bring in a little more business? What does that look like? Because you're giving up part of the income that you would ordinarily make. So there's got to kind of be a win-win
Win
there.
across the board.
Win across the board. Or otherwise, maybe you're better just doubling down on your marketing.
Right.
efforts.
Yeah.
But there are 2 or 3 different places in here that you reach a go, no-go decision.
Yes.
And then once you get to that final go decision, that's when we want to make sure that we're working with our clients. We're working with you because we'd like you to be our clients. I mean, we do this because we like to help people do things and do things the right way.
Yeah.
That's when we get into the weeds. We get into the details and make sure that what we're putting together not only benefits everybody financially, but it's done in a way that is compliant, that it's safe, and that everybody benefits.
Yeah. So that wraps it up, Wayne. I don't know if we got any questions, but I will reemphasize, as Pat was saying, like we really do want to dive in with you. If you've been approached by a client or if you're exploring, how do I put one of these together? We would love to walk down that road with you because I'm sure, like most of us, the questions are popping up, and maybe it's a few agents in your office that you work with, or maybe it's you're just kind of hearing it within the industry. and you want to get out in front of it. So let us partner with you. Let us figure out ways to walk alongside you in this pretty big process, again, because you're dealing with a lot of moving parts and making sure you're compliant via RESPA, making sure your operating agreement's set up. And we do it, and we actually bringing in, we've got partners in the industry that come alongside us when we're doing these joint ventures. So Wayne, I'll let you take it from here. If we got any questions, we'll be glad to jump into those. Yep. And
yeah, we did get a good one here on for a joint venture. Do all sponsorship dollars come out of the joint venture?
Do all sponsorship, okay, so let me address that one. Talking about sponsorships. Sponsorships for a while, kind of a hot topic in the enforcement industry, enforcement and regulatory arena, as probably should be. So we're going to look at the sponsorship opportunities for the joint venture, just like we look at the sponsorship opportunities for any other company who's being asked to do that. We have to make sure that the money that we're putting into a sponsorship opportunity, that we are getting the appropriate value, that we're getting fair market value for the opportunities. So, yes, I believe that, your sponsorship are going to come out of the JV just like they would out of any other operating company.
Yeah, I agree.
And you need to be taking appropriate, adequate steps to make sure that those are properly valued, whether it's an M-Link valuation, whether you're using some other evaluation method. Let me tell you my thought on that is, if you're going to do a sponsorship, yes, pay it out of the funds of the joint venture. Again, you got to be adequately capitalized, so there should be money there to do it. 2, make sure that you have reviewed that sponsorship opportunity. You know how many people you're getting in front of. You know what your role is. You know what the value of that opportunity is in terms of advertising dollars. Document it, put it in the file, put it in the folder, because if anybody comes to look at the joint ventures as opposed to a standalone title company, they're going to look a little harder.
Yeah, because you don't want, at the end of the day, this just to be another way to just loosely funnel, funds into that real estate company or whoever, lender that's asking. So we need to do it the same way we would as our standalone title companies, and make sure we're doing those, sponsorships or marketing deals, the same way we would under the compliance that we need to.
Now, that being said, again, we're dealing with an organic entity here. If we need funds in the entity, and we don't have the funds in the entity to do what we want to do, as the operating partner, you contribute additional capital. You put extra money into the entity as long as it's accounted for properly on the books and records of the company, whether that's in terms of a loan or whether it's in terms of contribution or whatever. So, but that money should be in the operating company at the time the sponsorship opportunity is paid.
Great question.
I did get one last question here that was texted to me by someone that made me promise not to say who they are, because they're a little confused. And I don't think they're alone in this, because I do think people get this mixed up in the industry. They said, what's the real difference between an MSA, a marketing services agreement, and a joint venture? And when would you want to employ one versus another?
That's a excellent question, because both are very viable. Both are also regulated, and we've got to make sure we're doing both under, in a compliant way. MSA, just, from a marketing standpoint, is really just advertising agreement. Right. We're investing our marketing into a partnering and marketing together with, say, whether it's a real estate company or a lender. And so those are, we just have to, as Pat mentioned a second ago, we've got to make sure those are measured out correctly. We're actually doing them for the appropriate
people.
The appropriate amount. We're accounting for who the audience is, and it's not just a payment. It's actually, we can document and prove that these marketing dollars are being used in a way that is actually marketing. And then, so I think that's a very, you're not diving into a long-term, relationship, business partnership. And then again, the other hand is the joint venture is.
I've got the analogy based on what you said. MSA is like you're casually dating. The joint venture is you're married.
Yeah. You've gotten way more skin in the game. You're truly partners in a business. And so as much as they get compared and it's like, should I choose this one versus this one? They really are completely different vehicles whenever we're partnering with or coming alongside some of our partners in real estate.
And in that point, we mentioned that on the joint venture, there's got to be enough business generated by that entity to pay all of its bills, to pay its employees, to pay the underwriter, to do all the things that it has to do. Not every considered joint venture is going to be able to do that. It's just not enough dollars there.
Mm-hmm.
But you still like working with this group of agents. You still like working with these people. So one of the things you can do if you don't have enough volume, enough dollars to successfully form a joint venture and have it work, is then you can step back and look at, well, how can we still work together in an MSA situation? In other words, we can't get married, can't afford it, but maybe we can still go out. Maybe we can still work together to mutually benefit our operations.
Well, and again, the goal at the end of the day is in an MSA is I'm trying to market to the same people that agent is to get business, and we have to
Consumer.
truly reflect
Yeah.
that is what's happening. Not that we're just pouring marketing dollars in to help the our a real estate agent or a lender or a brokerage. We have to be very clear in that. So
there have been, and I've been in attendance at several, I think mainly at the RESPRO conferences, the Real Estate Settlement Providers Council conferences, where some very intelligent, very good attorneys have done presentations on selecting an MSA versus a joint venture. And I'll go ahead and call out a couple names here. There's Jay Varon and Jennifer Keys at Foley and Lardner. And if you have access to any of those archives, but through your membership, you may want to go back and look at those because they've done some really excellent work on how do you determine what would be most beneficial and most easily compliant with what you have to do.
all right.
And then we did get one. I will make this one the very last question. How long does a joint venture or an MSA take to put together and start actually using?
I would say actually probably a joint venture takes a little bit less time than MSA because we don't necessarily need to farm out the valuation piece on it to MLink or to somebody else. We can form the state law entity in a matter of a day or so, but I think that getting the operating agreement in place, selecting the joint venture partners. What would you say the lead time would be, Marcus?
I mean, I think you're a solid. I mean, because you got a lot of. I actually lean probably the other way because I got to get underwriting agreements in place. I've got to get software set up. I've got to make sure all our JV partners fund the JV. Everybody gets the JV signed. So especially if you're dealing with a joint venture that's got multiple partners, and so maybe you've got 12.
45 days.
I'm on 90 days.
90 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think it's to be honest, probably a solid 3-month window to get all those things put into place, operating and being able to and get your disclosures in the right hands. So our real estate partners can, do contracts, have the disclosures at the time of doing, contracts and with their clients.
And this is another question that I'm sure somebody would like to ask and maybe didn't, is from the joint venture side, do you have a feel for, generally speaking, what the cost would be to get everything off the ground?
So the way I've seen them done, I usually take here's the true startup cost, one-time startup cost. So we look at those. What does that really look like? What does it mean to set up an office? And we're talking about, computers,
Furniture,
desks,
office
all this
computers,
stuff. Yeah. And get a space. We're talking about, what does it cost us to get our software, our license, for our software and set up. And so there's these one-time costs. And then in some of our legal fees to get, the entity established and the operating agreement. So whether that's a $15,000 to $20,000, startup cost. And then I look at, like you said it earlier, a 3 to 6 month window of expenses. And we try to, put an estimate together, pro forma that shows those expenses. So looking at, a startup cost, it's a one-time, and then plus, 3 to 6 months worth of ongoing expenses. And that's what we use to capitalize it.
That'll
And then
vary.
those are
Your mileage may vary depending on your market.
your market, your location, and what kind of space you're getting. And what, how many employees you really need to run that operation.
That's something that Title Success can help.
Oh, we can definitely
prospective
help
person
put
do.
those pieces together and put together an estimate. And then again, then it's funded. If the title entity is half the ownership, then the title entity funds it, half the startup cost, and then the other partners will, via their share, put in, and that's what their buy-in of their shares would cost. That's kind of the typical way that's done. Wayne?
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much. If you have other questions for our team, please let us know, and we will make sure that they get answered via email. You can reach out to us. All of our contact information is on titlesuccess.com. And like I said before, we will send out a copy of the recording of today's webinar along with the slides, but we are able to chat with you guys at any point and talk about this is a pretty personal decision based on your business and what you want to do. So we're happy to help think through that. Sometimes it's just the brainstorming of, will this work? What makes sense for you? And we can make that happen. So thank you all for joining us today. We'll be back for another webinar next quarter. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.